Welcome to Payne on Politics, a podcast where host Dr. Gregory Payne of Emerson College sits down with fellow experts to discuss the current state of politics, public opinion, and global affairs. In a world growing increasingly complex, communication and critical thinking is key. This only makes the Emerson motto, expression necessary to evolution, more true.
Hello, this is Gregory Payne, the Chair of Communication Studies at Emerson College, the first communication department in the United States. And I'm here in San Diego at the end of the Rediscover Rosarito Public Diplomacy Project. We've talked to several students who said this has been an immersive, life-changing event. But what's interesting is very seldom do you have someone who is a student in the program and then someone who's been a very, very important part of administering the program. So some of you might say, well, who would that be? And no, it isn't Pete Hall. But it's Shepard Vargo. So Shepard, I remember when you first came to Rosarito from Lake Erie, you were actually someone, because of the generosity of the Morse family, were given this opportunity. What was it like when you first heard of, you can go to Rosarito, Mexico for a summer?
Well, it's funny when I look back on that experience because I truly was clueless on what I was getting into, not just with Rosarito, but just Emerson College, this maverick that people call as Dr. Payne. But I just saw it as, I was told that I had an opportunity to work at a film festival. Not a lot of details because maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention, or it was there's distance because Lake Erie College didn't have much of a tie with Emerson. So I leapt at the opportunity, which I guess is probably the common theme that runs along my whole storyline here, is just seeing an opportunity and, not really being too frightened about it. So when I went down for the first time, and I went to ELA campus for the first couple of days before heading down to Rosarito, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this Emerson College place, this is something completely different than I had ever imagined. I've never really heard of many schools who kind of have this dynamic aspect. I mean, of like Ivy League schools, but this is way edgier than that. There's something more magical, more global because of just that experience in general. And then just the people who were in that room with me, the students. We had students from China, students from South America, students from Boston. We had another student that was with me from Lake Erie. And then next thing you know, we're going down to Mexico, and I'm working alongside our Mexican colleagues as part of the film festival and the public diplomacy aspect. And it was just so eye-opening to be around such a global cast of people for someone like me who comes from just Northeast Ohio. I'd, done a little bit of traveling within the United States from wrestling.
But I might add to the listeners out there, an all-American wrestler. Okay, so he was wrestling with the importance of being in a new country. So, you brought a lot to the program.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I think what I brought then and still bring is just a little bit Midwestern touch. Which I like being kind of representative of that. But now at least I like to carry the fact that I have a lot of global experience with that as well.
I think what's interesting, Shepard, is as you know, and we can move into some of the chapters after your initial visit. I grew up in the Midwest, so I appreciate that work ethic, which I know is very much part of your time. I think that many people would say that you coming on as the administrative associate, there's been another Energizer bunny that's entered in. But if we can, before we get to that particular piece, after you came to Rosarito, I know that you, of course, have heard me talk about this. You had an experience with some new boots, and I think it was acclimating. This was not Lake Erie. This wasn't Northern Ohio. And you told me that evening, I think this is not for me. I'm going to go back. And suddenly you didn't go back and you experienced it. You ended up going to Chile and other places. What do you think changed your mind from that one night to the next morning? And then here you are today helping other people have that same experience.
Well, you have told this story a lot, and I always kind of, giggle and blush every time because it's really silly, but just for context, I have we're going to a nice place that evening. I'm with some peers, some people my age, and I kind of like step in this puddle that was in, this Mexican street puddle, which actually wasn't quite a puddle. It stunk pretty bad. So I, called it a night. And then the next day I was like, this is kind of a nightmare experience. I just feel so embarrassed by, like I said, this global group of people who I was just so impressed by. And then you talked me off the ledge a little bit. What really kept me around though was, it was that global group of people and how closely I could just bond with them, with just under this shared experience, and how much fun I had just building that relationship with the Mexicans, with the Emersonians, and how moving that was for me. Seemingly so different, but we had this shared humanity. That's what really took me over.
That's interesting because I know when you talk about growing up in northeastern Ohio and having these memories of, the Schwabel Bakery. I know Lee Schwabel sometimes listen to this. You then decided to come along. We had a project, State Department project in Chile. And I was surprised. I said, Shepard, you really like Mexico. You should come along. And you said, well, why not? And the Morrises were happy about that. So when you went to Chile, how did that expand your horizons? Because you really are a global ambassador these days.
The opportunity was so mind-blowing for me. I thought it would be stupid for me not to leap at it. So when I went down there, I hit it off, had made great memories, great friends there, and everybody was so kind and welcoming. And I just saw how everyone build those relationships. So just another opportunity that put me outside the country, put me outside my comfort zone, saw it as such a moment to better myself. So ever since then, like you said, I've kind of just been obsessed with traveling and pushing my own boundaries and experiencing something other than, the United States.
I think one thing that we both experienced with a couple of others was, of course, when we were down there, they had a gastro school at the college and university. So we were being served some of the best beef and the best vegetables, as well as some of that wonderful Malbec wine. And since that time, I think you've developed quite a taste and you've experienced some of the similarities between the Chilean experiences and how that's defined by wine, as well as Guadalupe Valley here in Mexico. So can you talk a little bit about how you think wine, as well as other gastro elements, helps brand and define cultures?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the power of food is just truly remarkable. It's just the historical aspect of it that carries through families and carries through groups and communities, and how that is just a moment for people to meet and gather and connect and share ideas and build that bond, which is so important for just anything that is going to be constructive with the human relationships. Having those meeting places where people meet around the table, they share an enjoyable experience, they share a nice glass of wine, maybe that takes the edge off a little bit, and they can really get past some of the, the intense moment of kind of meeting somebody who's a little bit different from you. When you break bread with someone, as they say, it's a pathway towards a friendship. So in the grand scheme of things, I mean, that's so powerful, so important. And I think every aspect of, the traditional side of diplomacy, there's this gastro diplomacy aspect that usually ties along with it.
What's interesting is you and I have kept up with the Morrises as well as with each other for, the decade or so since. And we happened to talk with each other. You had a project dealing with tea that you had manufactured, a wonderful brand of tea. And I shared with you, gee, we're going through a situation. We need an administrative associate. You had been very successful with the PGA. You were working with the museum in Ohio. And I said, do you know anyone who might be interested? And you said, well, I think so. You're talking to him. What is it that would cause you to move from Ohio and join us back at Emerson as an administrative associate? What was the Velcro to get you back to Emerson?
Well, as I said, that first experience with Emerson, I've always viewed it as like this golden castle on the hill. It's a magical place that has such an opportunity to do humongous and powerful things. And then I knew I was going to be working alongside you, which I know we have, as you say, we have this energy that's kind of in common. We're building relationships, projects, and we don't really take the time off that most people maybe would, because we're just having so much fun doing the things that we're doing. It was that combination where I thought this is probably a great place for me to make an impact.
I think what's been exciting, you remind me a bit of course, Pete was expanding the role a bit. And then also Diego was somebody when he was working as an administrative associate in the 90s that further developed it. I think what you see with the administrative associate position is not only working with the chair and other members, but being a part of helping define what that future is. Since you've come on board, we've adopted many workshops. We've got some global projects and travel in the fall. You've said to me that you think that the department is sort of setting the stage in terms of global communication. Could you give me some examples of what you identify and how excited you are to work for some of these projects?
Well, Yeah, I mean, going back to my experience at Blanquerna, which was huge, getting my global communication degree there and my master's degree, and building those ties with some of our European colleagues, and then seeing how Emerson is still working with Blanquerna and building that relationship. And there's also these partnerships and potential partnerships with other universities and other academic institutions globally, as well as some groups like the Renan Group and Team Harmony, where there's just so much potential for Emerson to continue to set the tone, continue to bring their brand of, being the first communication school in the United States, being a leader in communication, being a leader in the arts, and just putting that at a global frontier. I see our colleagues in the department leap at those opportunities and the ability to give back to the next generation of leaders.
And what's exciting, I think, as you have said, is to work with individuals in the department, some more academic, some more professionally oriented, that are really excited to be change agents and more or less setting the standard. What I would say, Shepard, from my perspective, it's been great to have you here. A good example of what you do is, I would say, a utility player that can play in any of the capacities is this year, as we mentioned in a prior podcast, Mark Brody, who is the producer of the Rediscover Rosarito Film Festival, came down with COVID the first week. Luckily, we had you here, and you were able to continue Mark's teachings, and he was able to work with you. So what I would say to you is Emerson College Communication Studies is a better place because of Shepard Vargo. And I think that what we look forward to is you continuing to push us to a new frontier, so that, as I said, we can always see that Emerson is the place where evolution through expression is the key. So thank you very much, Shepard Vargo. What I would say is, if you had to give me a hashtag on your experience so far at Emerson, what would that be?
Oh my gosh, I'm the first person on the podcast, I think, to get put on the spot with a hashtag. So let me take a second here and think of a good one. I had one that was kind of floating in my head today. Hashtag travelers, not tourists.
I think one thing I would just, again, I thought I was going to end, but one thing that I've heard in taking students to the airport is the fact that they really enjoyed meeting people from Mexico, meeting people from different cultures, working on projects, whether it be in sports diplomacy with Boys and Girls Club and Rosa Torres, whether it be with Susanna with gastro diplomacy, our good friend David Silva, who shared his two kids, Jasmine, as well as Axel, in terms of art diplomacy. But the one thing this year, and I think you were a vital part of it, is they talked about the camaraderie among themselves, that they learned to work with each other, that, as one person said, at Emerson, I never really think about working with someone. I want that person to be my friend, but on this project, I got to know people that are going to be dear friends at Emerson forever. So I think a vital piece of why that happened was because of you, and I would like to thank you and encourage you to continue to do so.
No, I really appreciate that, and I think, in reflection, as it's one of my soft skills is being able to kick the ball down further towards the goal, and in a way that's fun and engaging for everybody to kind of work together with a smile on their face. So I like being able to hopefully continue to bring a lot more of that energy to Emerson.
Yes. Well, with this, Payne on Politics, we'll say goodbye to San Diego. But for those listening, we have a very, very exciting fall schedule. We have the Global Summit, so save that date at the Watergate. We've got more exciting tidbits there. Shepard is working directly to make sure that that's going to be a very exciting event. We'd like to thank Emerson Polling, as well as Paul Dorcas, Jan Roberts-Breslin, Bill Gilligan, Eric Alexander, and others who are making that happen. And also a shout out to Linda Peak Shack, who's working on a terrific project, which is going to help us elevate Emerson to the next level. See you in DC in November, and hopefully see you in DC for a longer period. Out from San Diego, Payne on Politics.